So I don't know what anybody else would do. But I wish that they would have put out the names before the event of the people that were
A
attending.
minute early, I guess, but I'll start to skip my little speed all the way. For those that don't know me, I'm Ryan Cloud, I'm the Dean of the College of Business and Leadership, and we are very happy that all of you joined us. We've got students, we've got people from the community for this special inaugural Enactus lecture series. So this is the first of what we're going to have several throughout the year. Future ones will be posted, so we welcome you in the community to come and see our next ones. But this evening we have a very special guest who's been globetrotting for the past 30 years or thereabouts of his life. And he's landed in Toledo. He is a native of Ohio. He's lived overseas for 15 years, 13 years in Belgium as managing director of the state of Ohio European office. And currently he serves as the Toledo region as the Vice President of International Development for the Regional Growth Partnership. He's a graduate of Ohio University and the Thunderbird School of Global Management with an MBA in International Management. And he has 30 years of international sales and international business development experience in every region of the world with responsibility for over $3 billion in cross-border transactions. And he sold to or assisted overseas companies such as Siemens, Daimler, Sony, Daewoo, Capgemini, British Sky, Mitsubishi. And currently he's promoting exports from and foreign direct investment from Toledo here. So just before the session started, when I got here, we talked about, and he's going to share more about foreign investment and international opportunities right here in Toledo. And that's one thing I've always mentioned to our students is they don't realize how connected Toledo is. They think Toledo is just a little blip on the dot. The reality is Toledo has a footprint all over the world, right? And so, so without further ado, I welcome Paul Zito to share a little bit about international development and growth here in Toledo. Right? So let's give a warm welcome to Paul.
Guten Abend, bonsoir, ni hao. Umino chonjo bite kodasai wase. That's good evening in a couple of languages. And sometimes when I get into languages, I kind of do flashbacks. The last bit was, thank you very much for coming to SeaWorld of Aurora, Ohio's Pearls of the Orient exhibition. My name is Paul, and I'll be your pearl expert. That was a high school and college job that I had. Even then, I was using languages. I'd like to thank Terry Easter, really, for putting this all together. She did a great job. She's a great resource from the College of Business and Leadership. And Dean Butt, thank you very much. And Michael Potter, thank you as well. And also President Livingston. President Livingston sits on the board of the Regional Growth Partnership, and he's a great supporter of what we do in economic development in the Toledo region and Northwest Ohio. Okay, title for today is How to Succeed in Business, International Business Without Really Trying. Anyone know where I stole that title from? I kind of paraphrased it. Great musical from the 60s, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. Have you ever seen it? Oh my goodness, just for the clothes alone, the classic 60s. Try to watch it. It really is one of the great musicals of the 60s, and the business lessons in it are hilarious. You can probably do a class on it itself. I'm going to speak a little bit about my background. I really hate talking about myself, but perhaps some of the things that I've been through and the so-called career path that I've taken might be of interest to you. Maybe you've had similar experiences. Maybe you want to have similar experiences, or maybe you want absolutely no kind of experiences like I've had. But you can judge for yourself. I'll then give you some tips on how to succeed in international business, both as a student and in the business world itself. And then at the end, I kind of have an ulterior motive for speaking with you. And we'll get to that at the end. I do have a lot of experience in international business. I've been doing it ever since I got out of school and even while I was in school. I've done about $100 million in direct sales all over the world. You name any country, region, or territory with the exception of Cuba and North Korea, and I've done some deals there. UK, Japan, small areas like the West Indies and Pakistan. In terms of helping businesses with their investments in the US and helping US businesses with their markets in Europe and elsewhere around the world, I've easily facilitated over $2 billion in foreign direct investment into Ohio. I've worked with some big names: Siemens, Tyson Krupp, Reed Elsevier, British Petroleum, Sony, Hyundai, individuals that you might know. So, I've sat at the table or in the boardroom with Silvio Berlusconi, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Carlos Slim, Sumner Redstone, Christine Lagarde of the IMF, Dieter Zetsche of Daimler, Frank Rabot of Group Danone, President Roman Herzog of Germany, Madonna, unbelievably, Faye Dunaway, Jean-Claude Van Damme, and even John Cryer from that horrible show 2.5 Men. I did work for 10 years in the motion picture industry. So how did I get into all this garbage and become the vagabond that I am? It all started really because of the great school system in Ohio. And those of you that have grown up in Ohio and have never left, a lot of people that have never left Ohio, they don't realize what good schools you have in Ohio, kindergarten through 12, and certainly university. Go to other parts of the United States and good luck with the public schools. In third grade in Shaker Heights, Ohio, we had mandatory French classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 25 minutes each. And most of the kids hated it. They laughed the whole time and wouldn't pay attention. And I kind of dug it because it was something different than reading, writing, arithmetic, and science. You know, Madame would come in and say, "Bonjour classe, bonjour tout le monde." We would say, "Bonjour Madame." She'd say, "Qu'est-ce que c'est?" And we would say, "C'est ton livre." "Qu'est-ce que c'est?" "C'est ton oiseau." "Comment allez-vous?" "Très bien, Madame, et vous?" And it was kind of like a mind break throughout the school week of something different. Studied French for a while up into sophomore year of high school, got bored with French and took German. And I had one of those dynamic teachers that was just, the way he taught was so great, hard as heck, but a great, great teacher. And with 2 years of high school German, I became fluent in German. And I'd never set foot in a German-speaking region. After I graduated from high school, our soccer team, Fußballmannschaft, went to Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And as we got off our flight and were driving towards Bingen am Rhein, on the Rhine River near Frankfurt, my bow-legged soccer coach, German teacher, waddled up and he said, "Zito, tomorrow in Bingen, after the soccer match, I want you to give a little speech and thank the mayor and the community for having us there." It's like, okay, you gotta be kidding me. I'm gonna give a speech in another language in a foreign country, and oh, by the way, I have jet lag. But it was one of those situations of make it or break it. So, you know, I'm sitting in the back of the van and I'm writing out. And so I said, Herr Bürgermeister Schmidt und meine Damen und Herren, wir sind ja sehr dankbar für Ihre Gastfreundlichkeit in Bingen und so weiter, so weiter. You know, thank you very much for having us. We love your hospitality. And something clicked in my head, and I looked out at all those people. There were a lot of business people at that, because a lot of the businesses in Germany support soccer teams and handball teams and things like that. And I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to talk to businesses and help them around the world. Backtrack a bit. When I was still young, my father would travel all over the world. He was general counsel for Cooper Tire, a large conglomerate by the name of Gould in the Cleveland area that no longer exists. It was broken up. But in the early 70s, he was going to Russia, Korea, Germany, all these exotic places. And at first, I really dug the souvenirs that he brought back. You know, comic books in German, or those little Russian dolls within a doll, within a doll, within a doll. Then as I got older, I really dug hearing what he would say about the differences in the way that people did business, or the way they lived. And I just thought, I want to get to know the world like that. I did study in Salzburg, Austria for 2 years. Salzburg is the Mozartstadt, birthplace of Mozart, also Sound of Music, great place, highly recommended if you're ever backpacking through Europe. I then studied at OU, political science and German, and I thought I was going to be a lawyer just like my dad, but I had my first midlife crisis when I was, 21 years old, and I decided to go into international business. And I went to a school by the name of Thunderbird. It's in Phoenix, Arizona. Actually, it's in Glendale, Arizona. Phoenicians wouldn't like for Glendale to be considered part of Phoenix. It is the granddaddy of international business programs. It was started in 1947 as a way to retrain the military from World War II that had spent time in the Philippines, Europe, elsewhere. Years ago, it was considered really the top, one of the only 2 international MBA programs in the country. The other one was at University of South Carolina. And it's a great program. If you look at international MBA programs around the world, most of them are modeled after the Thunderbird curriculum. I got out of grad school and I thought, I got this master's degree, I'm so hot. And I traveled to Europe on my own penny. I went to the International Gem and Jewelry Show in Basel, Switzerland, and I met with Brown, the appliance maker of coffee makers, and many other companies, and they all said, well, you're a really bright young man, but you don't have any real corporate experience. And I got that over and over and over. So I did something that I recommend that you do. I took a good job, and I thought that it would lead to something international, and it did. My dream of living and working overseas, it actually took 10 years. I spent 10 years in Los Angeles in the motion picture industry. I sold the rights to motion pictures for cinema, video, television, all over the world. And it was great training. I was put into an office and given a stack of contracts. My first job was a collections manager. And they said, go through those contracts and collect all that money. And oh, by the way, your predecessor was collecting $500,000 a week. We expect you to be up to that level in about 5 weeks. So, I'm a young 20-something kid that doesn't know anybody in Los Angeles, and I'm going through those contracts. And much of the stuff in those contracts, because it is intellectual property, although some of the movies that I sold you wouldn't call intellectual at all, a lot of that is used in any standard international distribution agreement. I went to film festivals all over the world, the Cannes Film Festival, WeFed, and others. And I really wasn't in it because it was Hollywood. I was in it because of the international aspect. I was doing business all over the world every day. I then got tired of Los Angeles for a number of reasons. The 1992 Rodney King riots weren't too fun to live through, nor was the 1994 Northridge earthquakes, the Malibu fires, whenever those were. And my wife and I thought, time to get out of Los Angeles. Through Thunderbird, I saw a position, Managing Director of the State of Ohio European Office, based in Brussels, Belgium. Help Ohio companies export to Europe, do market research for them, distributor searches, help them with EU standards and other things, and promote European investment into Ohio. There are about 500 European-owned facilities in the state of Ohio. Many of them whose names you probably recognize, many of them you may not. Did some great work in Brussels and throughout Europe. I was fortunate or unfortunate enough to host governor delegations with Governor Vojtovic, two with Governor Taft. And those were really cool, because when you get a governor coming to the UK or Germany or France or wherever, you're meeting with the top level of those companies, of British Petroleum and Reed Elsevier and Daimler. I mean, Dieter Zetsche, I was on a first name basis with him and his office, and other bigwigs, and it was good exposure for Ohio. 2008, the big recession, Ohio Department of Development started cutting its budgets of its offices around the world, and I was somewhat of a casualty. Actually, the timing was good, because my wife and I and our son, who was born in Belgium, we thought maybe time to go back to the US. Timing was great because the Regional Growth Partnership for the first time wanted to have someone to work solely on international development. I knew the Toledo area from the work that I'd done statewide. I knew the universities, I knew the schools, I knew some of the industry, I knew some of the partners like the Toledo Regional Chamber of Commerce and the Toledo Lucas County Port Authority, and I thought, not a bad place to be, and a good business climate. The hard part was selling my wife, who was a native Chicagoan. We met in Los Angeles and then lived 13 years in Belgium, and she honestly said, Toledo, seriously? And I had to do a pitch on her, and I said, look, great logistics and good central location. We're not that far from Chicago. Great airport at DTW, Detroit Airport, and great schools. And we've now been here 4 years, and my wife loves it. Our son loves it very much. So that's the long version of how I got here. Now I'd like to give you some kind of tips and advice on how to forge an international career path and how to conduct international business. So we'll talk about some things you can prepare as you're a student, some resources that you might want to use, some methods that I would recommend and some that I would not, and finally some information about what's going on in Toledo in the international scene. Now as a student, learn a language, master a language. How many of you students who are native English speakers speak another language? Nobody? How many are studying another language? Yeah, what are you studying?
Italian.
Okay. Study any language. You know, people will say, oh, Mandarin's the way of the future, you know, or you have to have Spanish. I mean, if you want to concentrate on Latin America, sure, take Spanish, but really learn any language you can. When I'm in Japan and China, I only speak French and German, but the Japanese and Chinese are amazed that I can speak another language. Like, you're an American. Americans don't speak other languages. So study a language. Plus, when you learn a language, you learn about the culture of those people and of that country, not only by the stuff you read, but by the way they express themselves. Most things cannot be translated, absolutely. Reading. I know you read enough as a student. I recommend The Economist once a week. It's the greatest source of international news probably on the planet. If you can, read either the Financial Times or the Wall Street Journal. And in the New York Times is Roger Cohen. He appeared in what was the International Herald Tribune when we were in Belgium. I hate reading columnists because I know everything in the world. Why would I care what anyone else thinks? But Roger Cohen is excellent. He always talks about some international issue and the way he boils it down. If you go on to New York Global Times or the international edition of the New York Times, you can find Roger Cohen very, very easily. Definitely do a study abroad program. Is it a requirement for the MBA or?
MBA has a strong push to make it a requirement,
Okay.
but we also have an opportunity for undergrad in Italy.
Okay. And be careful with the study abroad programs. I've run into so many American students who go, yeah, I'm in Italy or I'm in Germany, the beer's great. Well, do you speak the language? Have you learned anything? Not that you have to be a study nut all the time. Of course you want to have fun, but choose one that's got some programs that are of interest to you. And choose one in an area. Do you want to be in a big city? Would you rather be in a smaller town? It's a great experience. Internships. Take an internship if you can with any company that has international stuff going on. As a matter of fact, the state of Ohio has an export internship program that will reimburse a company, I forget the exact amount, but it's a really good deal, for an intern to work on an export strategy development program or a market analysis of another country. And that gives you real experience. I've known a number of students in the Toledo area over the past couple of years that have done internships with local companies, and when they graduate, they're given a job offer. You can't ask for a better trajectory than that. Immerse yourself into an overseas culture. If your interest is Europe or Latin America or China or whatever, do everything you can to learn about that. Go, watch movies that are in that language and from that country. Listen to the music. Most countries around the world will have an English language daily or weekly newspaper. I know in Brussels, Belgium, we have the Bulletin. In China, there's China Daily. In Japan, there's the Japan Times. Even though it's in English, read those to find out what's actually going on in that country. Also, make a decision. Do you want to go into finance or marketing? When I was at Thunderbird, there were two tracks. You could be international marketing or international finance. I chose marketing. And even though I was marketing, there's a heck of a lot of finance involved in that. But try to specialize in one of those areas. And then finally, people that come fresh out of school say, how can I get a job in international marketing? And I always say, find a company, a product, or a service that is of interest to you and that you know something about. If you like plastics and polymers, find the nearest plastics and polymers company and get any job that you can, and let them know from the onset that you would like to get into their international operations or their international marketing. I can guarantee you that if you're diligent and if the company is in any way cool at all and well run, the cream will rise to the top, and in a couple of years you'll probably be doing some fascinating stuff internationally for that company. Now once you get into the business world and your boss says, okay, go forth and forge an export strategy for our company. We've never exported before, or we've never exported to Europe, but we want to try that now. What do you need to do? First, think about things like compliance. What types of standards are there in that country that you're targeting that are different from here? What types of certification? Things like in the European Union, EU standards, and the CE mark, and compliance with chemical directives and other directives. Also determine if your pricing will be attractive for your product or your service by the time you ship that product around the world, with the cost of shipping, with the tariffs, with the duties, with value-added tax and other costs. Will that price be competitive to what's available in that overseas market? Coals to Newcastle. Does anyone know what the phrase coals to Newcastle means? No? Oh God, my age. Coals to Newcastle is a coal mining town in the UK. So why would you ship coals to Newcastle? It's a very common term in literature. Determine if there is in fact a need for your product or service. Germany is a great example. 30 years ago, if you were a management consultant, you could never do anything in Germany. Now there are so many management consultants running all over Germany that are homegrown from Germany and from other countries. So 30 years ago would have been, like coals to Newcastle. I worked with a local company, actually from the Toledo area when I was in Brussels, Belgium, that had perfume, made perfume, and they wanted to market it in Europe. Now, I'm not the biggest follower of fashion and glamour and all that, but I know you see those glossy ads for perfume and the packaging and the posters and all that, and I found out that to launch a new perfume in Germany, UK, Netherlands, France, Italy, Spain, the larger markets, you've got to have at least $1 million advertising budget, and this company didn't have it. So I said, forget about Europe. And oh, by the way, I didn't tell them this, but the perfume stank like high heaven. It was horrible. We had a little locker in our office in Belgium where we put all the toxic stuff, because we'd get sometimes like paint samples if we were helping a paint company. We threw that in there. It's probably being destroyed by some chemical outfit now. Also had an experience with a chocolate company from Ohio who wanted to export chocolate to Europe. Now you got Swiss chocolate, Belgian chocolate, German chocolate, Austrian chocolate. Some people even like the British chocolate. Why on earth would you export American chocolate to Europe? Make sure that you have support from management. A lot of smaller companies, mid-sized companies, 50 to a couple hundred employees or so, will say, hey, we got to export. It'll help us offset our losses in the U.S. And they'll grab someone and they'll say, okay, you are going to be our new export manager. Develop an export strategy. So the first things you want to ask that boss is, what's my budget? Because you cannot crack a new market, especially a foreign one, without spending some money on travel, trade shows, advertising, research, etc. So say, what's my budget? What kind of support am I going to get? Who in accounting do I deal with? Who in shipping do I deal with? Who in research and development do I deal with to make sure that our product is tailored for that overseas market? So make sure you get full support from the management. Make sure you have the proper systems in place. Anyone can sell anything, anywhere in the world, but a sale's only as good as the money that you actually get in the bank. So after a sale is made, you need to make sure that your bank is savvy enough to handle international wire transfers, letters of credit that are drawn from overseas banks, maybe even international financing. You also have to figure out, is your logistics service provider able to ship stuff internationally? Shipping things around the world is very, very complicated. Who pays for what? Who pays for the insurance? Who pays for the duties? Who pays for the transport from the ship or the aircraft to the actual customer? Talk to your freight forwarder. A lot of companies these days do ship with UPS and FedEx. Talk to them. Make sure you can get all the information that you want. The freight business is a cutthroat business, and if you're dealing with a freight company, UPS, FedEx, freight forwarder, whatever, and they can't answer all the questions and hold your hand through the export shipping process, find another one, because they're banging on the door to get new business. Also, when you think about the overseas market, regionalize. Those of you that have ever traveled a lot, you may know that northern Italy is a heck of a lot different than southern Italy. Within Germany, there are several different regions, Bavaria and the far north and kind of the Frankfurt area. And think about the geography of these countries, and with your product, can you handle everything from one central location in that country, or should you regionalize? Some things to think about in terms of export sales and international marketing. You have to be ready to play the long game. When you're dealing with countries and customers thousands of miles away, with a different language, with different laws and regulations, it's going to take a lot longer. Your profits might not come that quickly. You may not know what is the real pricing for Latin America for my product, or what is the real pricing in China for my product, and your margins may not be that good at first. But once you get things started in an overseas market, it'll probably be a very stable relationship. If you can, in making your pitch to a customer or a distributor overseas, let them know more than just about the product and the pricing and the history of the company. Let them know what your strategies are. Many American companies, if you ask them what's their 5-year plan, they, what? We don't have one. Encourage the management of your company to have a 5-year plan or even longer. A couple of weeks ago, Japanese company Sekisui Plastics, one of the largest companies in Japan, opened up a new facility in Kenton, Ohio, about 60 miles south of here. They have a 100-year plan. They're, I think, 22 years into their 100-year plan. I mean, it's fascinating. And a 5-year plan shows that you are serious. And a lot of overseas companies see American businesses and American business people as really only focused on the short term. Counteract that perception. And then use what I call a Gestalt method of making decisions. Anyone know what Gestalt means? Psychology term to use different types of psychology, psychoanalysis, and the others for treatment. In terms of making decisions, when you're cracking that market in Italy or Panama, it's a whole new world, and you're going to have to be guesstimating on quite a few things. So take the financial data that you have, take the feeling that you have about the conversations and dialogue that you've had with this new customer and the distributor. Take what you know about the competition and kind of put that all together and then make your decision. As a first-time exporter or a company about to embark on an international strategy, I'd recommend to focus on the major markets. Why? Because they're big, and if you can do well in those major markets, it'll help you, and then you can go into some of the smaller markets. Generally, for most products and services, the major markets would be Canada, our next door neighbor, the UK, Germany, Japan, China, and Mexico. A lot is exported to China and Mexico. Things are easy when you're big in Japan. There are a lot of American products and American services that actually don't do all that great in the US, or they do okay, But all of a sudden, in an overseas market, they're like the greatest thing since sliced bread. Again, regionalized within those countries. Even Japan, geographically kind of a small nation, but the different parts of Japan are very different from each other. You're going to be dealing with people from around the world. Get really good with names, because names like John Smith aren't that common. I always think some of the most difficult are the Turkish, the Greek, Indian, and some Latin names. Ugur Tetsioglu, one of my longtime distributors from Turkey, and Ismet Kazanchoglu, and Parameshvaran from India, and Horacio Altamirano from Mexico. Look at someone's business card and memorize it, figure out how to pronounce it. It goes a long way if you can pronounce someone's name correctly. Think about manners and customs. When I was in Austria as a student, our professor always shouted at us for being laut und ungebildete Amerikaner, loud and uncool or uncouth Americans, because our manners were so bad. Think about things like table manners. You're at this big dinner in Paris or something, and if you're sitting there like this and going like that, it's not too cool. There's a great, you could write a book on the different ways of toasting people. When you have a drink, toasting champagne or whatever. In Europe, you always look someone in the eye. If you don't look someone in the eye when you're toasting, like, hey, Prost, they think you're a little shady. In Asia, in most of Asia, usually the person with the most seniority or status will be on top. So as they toast, if I'm the bigwig, like that. And if you want to be humble, sometimes people will go like this. And so quite often, if you're talking with a bigwig, that bigwig's assistant will put their hand under the glass so that you can't lower it, to show respect. Also think about the way you speak and the way you write. I'm amazed at how many emails that I get that say, "Hi, Paul," from someone that I have never known. That really doesn't fly overseas. Always make it very proper. Dear Mr. So-and-so, dear Dr. So-and-so. Don't be too casual. A couple of myths. English is everywhere. A lot of Americans think, well, I don't need to know anything about that language because everybody speaks English. If you go to the major cities in any country, sure, you probably won't have a problem. But most of your customers are not going to be in the major cities. When I go to Europe and I'm meeting companies like some of the ones that you may have seen in the slides that I had, they're in small towns, and the level of English fluency in those small towns is not that great. International travel, I'm amazed how many young people I meet and they say, I want to get an international business and see the world. If you saw any of the slides that were running before, you didn't see a lot of mountains or castles or things. You saw trade show centers and conference rooms and hotels. That's about all you see when you're really working and traveling overseas. To squeeze in any sightseeing time is very rare. I stole this phrase, euphoria. Exuberance is the engine for getting where you want to go, Van Teveret. I stole that from Dave Froman of the Andersons, who does a great presentation on international marketing. And he pointed something out that I found quite often. You as a business or a business person, you meet this exotic person from Brazil or China or Vietnam or Italy or wherever, and I'm like, wow, they have really cool clothes and the way they speak, and all those eyes are just wonderful. And yet you're in this euphoria, wow, I'm dealing with this foreign culture. Take a step back and remember that you're trying to run a business, you're trying to promote a business, and think about it in terms of the dollars and cents of the deal that you want to make, and the trust that you have, or maybe you don't have in this person. So you'll get a euphoria, get over it, and think about the dollars and cents. The brown envelope, that relates to cash under the table, bribes, etc. People will say there are certain countries, and I don't want to mention them, where that's a way of doing business. I've been doing international sales all over the world for 30 years. I've never had to do that at all. Keep your standards, keep your morals, not only because you want to be a good person, but you can get in trouble with our federal government as well. Some resources that I hope can help you, and this is probably where a test might come in for your class. Locally, there are some great resources. The Toledo Regional Chamber of Commerce has an ITAC, an International Trade Assistance Center, a wealth of information and resources that can help a local company with its export strategy. Colleen Cardaz, who's a lawyer who runs the ITAC, is a great person and has great knowledge of international exports. The state of Ohio has its own export office and can help a company do distributor searches all over the world. They also have cash for exporting companies. An exporting company that wants to go to a trade show in another country, or do some advertising in another country, or have some brochures translated into another language. There is cash available through the IMAGE grants. IMAGE is the International Market Access Grant for Exporters. Also, the U.S. Commercial Service, which is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, has offices around the world at the embassies and consulates of the United States. If you ever see in the movies the commercial attaché, that's who that is, works for the U.S. Commercial Service. They do research for American companies that want to export to a certain country. They can also help with any troubles that a U.S. company might have in a certain country. AmChams, the American Chamber of Commerce. There are AmChams in just about every country of the world. As a matter of fact, 4 weeks ago when I was in Shanghai, I met with the AmCham Shanghai. They are a great resource. And one great thing about the internet is that all of these places that I mentioned, go to their website and they have a wealth of information on international business. Especially the AmChams. If you ever are doing a paper on a certain country, find American Chamber of Commerce in China or Germany or Panama or wherever. Trade associations and publications. Any trade association generally has ties to its counterparts around the world and are great resources. I've been dealing a lot with the National Tooling and Machining Association. You can see how exotic my life is that I'm dealing with the National Tooling and Machining Association. But their Western Lake Erie chapter is a fascinating group of people, and they have great ties around the world. If you go to their website, you can get connected to the international website and the other associations around the world. So if you're studying or working in tooling and machining, you can find information by that method. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in, any good trade association should have information on the international markets and ties to the international markets. Likewise, their publications, a monthly gazette of office furniture or whatever. Chances are they're going to have articles about what's hot in Europe, what's hot in Asia, etc. Service providers, banks, utilities, law firms, freight forwarders. If you are getting into international business and exporting, make sure that your bank has some resources to help you. You say, hey, gosh, we've never done any business in Belgium. What do we have to think about in terms of payments and financing and things like that? So talk to your bank. Also, law firms. Most law firms have some kind of affiliation with partners around the world, either a formal affiliation or just a loose network. I depend on banks and law firms a lot to find information and contacts in other countries. And of course, the internet. With a good Google search, you can find information on just about anything that you want. Try to weed out the garbage and make sure it's a good source. And now the best tip of the night is www.export.gov. That is the website of the U.S. Commercial Service and all their offices around the world. They have sections on just about any country that you can imagine, and loads and loads and loads of free market research. It's very easy to navigate. I've mentioned trade shows a couple times, and trade shows are a great way to make a big bang with not so many bucks. I've been doing a trade show in Hanover, Germany, a very large industrial trade show for 17 of the past 20 years. It cost me about $5,000 to get into the show, fly over there, have my hotel, dinners, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And over 5 days, I can meet with 60 different companies from around the world. 60 into 5,000 is very cheap in terms of leads. Most trade shows overseas are much more international in scope than they are in the US. There are very few really global shows in the United States that happen. But in Europe and Asia and elsewhere around the world, they are much more global in scope. Unlike US trade shows, most overseas trade shows are really not hard sells. You don't come there and sit down and say, here's our price list, let's make a deal. You get to know people, which is actually very, very good. Again, it's a cheap and easy way to research a market and to target a market. But you can't just show up at the trade show. You got to do some advance work. And luckily, most overseas trade shows these days have great databases of the people that are at those trade shows. So again, and even as a student, if you're doing a paper on a certain industry, find an overseas trade show that is in that industry. Chances are you can get a lot of good, free information. In dealing with overseas companies, you have to remember you have a language barrier, you have some cultural differences, and things are going to be a bit slower. Again, you need to be more formal in your written communication and just in your dialogue, face-to-face dialogue with overseas companies. You also need to plan far in advance. You know, in the US, someone can say, hey, I'm going to be in Dallas on Wednesday. Can we have lunch? Can we meet? No problem. I always recommend give it at least 3 weeks advance notice when contacting someone to set up a meeting. Usually meetings are longer. Americans like quick, easy meetings. You know, they've got you scheduled at 1 o'clock. You better be out of there by 1:45. You know, generally overseas, if you're an American coming to China or Japan or Europe or Latin America, you know, they want to have a nice lunch for you. They want to give you a company tour. They want to do the PowerPoint. So plan on longer meetings. Also, don't rush the meeting. Have a little chit chat, get to know the people, and then get into the meat of the business. Try to have a little foresight about what your relationship might be with this potential customer or distributor or partner, and let them know that you have a commitment to a long-term relationship with them. Tell them about the history of your company. You're not just some startup that happened in someone's garage 18 months ago, you know, family-owned company, 3 generations, et cetera, et cetera. Talk to them about your strategic plans, even if it might not figure exactly into the sale that you're trying to make. Say, gosh, you know, I know we're talking about the automotive industry, but our company is also doing some great things in renewable energy, just to let them know how diverse their company is. And talk about other areas that you could cooperate. You know, you may be looking at them now as a customer or distributor, but gosh, you know, we would like to do something in India, and that company has never done anything in India before. Maybe we could do a joint venture there. Again, I always say, you know, be more formal in your meetings and correspondence. Also, don't just depend on email. A lot of Americans are lazy, and they'll send an email and they say, I haven't heard from the guy. You know, call them up. You know, maybe even use old school and send a nice package by the mail. I've even heard some people, and I've used this trick a couple times, it depends on the country, but send a fax. People get so few faxes, and when they get one, they're like, wow, this is really cool. I haven't gotten a fax in 18 months. But it gets their attention. Speak and write clearly. I am amazed how many Americans go overseas and have a meeting, and they say, you know, hey, really good to meet you. God, you know, we had a great time at the hotel, blah, 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 blah. Dude, slow down. English is not their first language. The trips that I was in Germany a week ago, Japan and China 4.5 weeks ago, and I was with some people from Ohio, and they're just talking so fast. Slow down, look people in the eye, and enunciate so that, you know, they can say, oh, that's what he's saying. Don't use slang, words like rainmaking and multi-touching and outside the box, pink slip, eureka moment, and oh, we're in a gazelle industry. They may have no idea what that means. And then, even more conversational slang like the whole 9 yards, yada, yada, yada. One great tip for communications that I recommend is hire a receptionist. If you have people calling from all over the world and they get that, thank you for calling XYZ Industries. If you know the extension of your party, please press it now. For the company directory, please press pound. And you go, what? Hire a receptionist who can say, hello, thank you for calling XYZ. How may I help you? Make things much more efficient. Once you do get to the point of making a deal, it may have taken a long time, but once you first get that trust and do the first transaction or so, chances are you're going to have that distributor and that customer for a very, very long time. Once you do strike a deal, treat it as an honor. Give a gift. Do some PR in your local paper and send it to them in Japan or Europe or wherever. Say, look, we made the local paper. And also stress your service. One of the best things going for American exports is the service that is offered. And that's on the industrial side as well. Most industrial companies have a service policy of we will respond within 24 hours. We will be there within X number of days. Stress that because a lot of competing companies to American companies around the world cannot offer that service. Couple quick examples, snowplows to Scandinavia. These are some companies that I thought did a really good job. Meyer Snowplow out of Cleveland, very old school company, snowplows. Their brochures, when we looked at them, looked as if they were printed and designed in 1948. They were horrible. This guy comes over, doesn't speak any foreign language, meets with me in Brussels, Belgium, and I just said, oh man, good luck. He had the support of his management. They gave him a rental car. They had him for 7 months going literally from Spain to Poland and back. He hit every municipality that needs snow plows, snow removal services. They tripled their exports to Europe within 18 months. Did a great job. I don't really have time for the rest of them. We can talk about them some other time. Some other miscellaneous tips. Many of you may know that in particularly Asian cultures, when you ask someone something and they say yes, they may not be agreeing with you. They're just saying, I heard you, I understand you. Anger is an energy. When I was a young buck, I was told that quite often with Korean and other Asian businesses, if they're giving you difficulty, you actually have to yell at them. I said, well, I can't do that. I think I had 1.2 million outstanding with this Korean distributor, and I was saying, oh, let's just give it another couple days, another week. And someone, actually a Korean American friend of mine, said you have to yell at them. So I called the woman up and I said, blankety, blankety, we don't get that right away. And within 36 hours, we got a new letter of credit and everything was worked out. A very important point, one difference, many Americans are in a restaurant overseas and they say, excuse me, where's the restroom or the bathroom? And you kind of get a blank look. Overseas, you ask for, where is the toilet? Don't want to be too scatological. I already mentioned on toasting. With most European and Latin cultures, if you're toasting someone, look them in the eye. Jet lag, it can either kill you or it can energize you. The best tip I can give in international travel is once you land, keep going. If you go to your hotel and unpack and sit and watch the TV or read, you're going to be doomed. If you have work to do, do it. If you can go for a walk or a hike or something, do it, and you'll get in tune with the local clock. And contrary to the advertisements, American Express ain't that well received overseas. I recommend going with Visa and MasterCard. Some good, bad, and ugly things about the life in international business. You can get to know every corner of the earth or every corner of the country of interest. And not as a tourist, not just seeing it and enjoying it, but really getting to know the people, the systems, the society there. You know, I mentioned that quite often when you travel internationally for work, you don't get to do a lot of sightseeing. The pastor at our church a couple of years ago when I got back from China said, "Did you see the Great Wall of China?" And I said, "No, I was in meetings the whole time." "Did you see the Forbidden City?" "No, I was in meetings all the time." So you can get to know a country, you may not have a lot of time for sightseeing. International travel ain't as it is in commercials or television. You know, you have someone saying, Skyping their wife and saying, "Oh yeah, everything's great, the hotel room's beautiful." Quite often connectivity with email and internet can be a pain. I have Verizon Global Services on speed dial, and their global customer service, they know me very well. You always have problems with, why can't I make calls? Why am I not getting my emails? Why can I not go on the internet? Also that dream that I had of living as an expatriate that I did in Belgium for 13 years. Again, it's not like it is on TV. When you have to pay the bills, cut the grass, take the trash out, take the car for the emissions test. Oh man, I got an ulcer every year when I had to do that. Go to the hospital because you broke your bone. It's a lot different than it appears in movies. Another big negative of the world of international business is quite often in the company in which you work, you are the redheaded stepchild. You are that international geek that nobody else really understands exactly what you do. Why are they flying all over the country? And why do they have these exotic people visiting all the time? I've experienced it in almost every job that I have. One of the great things about international sales, international marketing, international finance, and really at the heart of it, the reason that I've done this, and it's actually one of the mottos of Thunderbird, and that is, I believe very strongly that we can achieve world peace through world business. When you're talking money and service with someone from another country, another religion, usually politics and religion don't come into it. So who can succeed? It's really not the products, but the companies and the individuals, the integrity of them. Also, if you have good systems in place, you'll provide efficient service, you'll probably do well. Of course, you have to spend money to make money. You have to show a long-term commitment to your overseas partners. You have to think about regions around the world and within those countries. And you have to have the support from all levels of management. Regional growth partnership, my employer, what do? We bring businesses here, we keep them here, and we help companies do business all over the world. We are part of the Jobs Ohio network. Jobs Ohio is the economic development agency for the state of Ohio. When I was in Brussels, Belgium, I worked for the state of Ohio. Jobs Ohio is the best thing to happen to economic development in Ohio in the past 10 years, without a doubt, particularly on the international front. The Regional Growth Partnership and all of our partners, the chambers, the banks, law firms, accounting firms, we're here to help businesses and we're here to help you. If we can ever help you out with your career aspirations, don't hesitate to contact me. In 2014, Regional Growth Partnership was responsible for $1.8 billion in investment in new manufacturing operations and expanded operations, and over 3,200 jobs. For foreign direct investment, the area that I spend most of my time on, there are 170 foreign-owned establishments in the 20 counties that we cover in Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan. Those employ 30,000 people directly, and that number is rising. When I was here 4 years ago, it was about 18,000. It's rising every year. Total jobs supported by those foreign companies is over 70,000. The results in 2014 for foreign direct investment into the region was about $720 million from about 20 different companies and the creation of over 800 jobs. Exports are booming. Exports equal jobs. Toledo area has done very well, almost $5 billion in exports in 2014. That was a 41% increase from the year previously, and that was the third highest increase in the U.S. Top destinations, Canada, of course, Europe, and a lot is exported to China and Mexico. A lot of people don't realize that. Now, the selfish part. All you young people who are studying and have great minds, want you to stay here. Think about, when you graduate, there are some great opportunities in the Toledo area for young people with some international experience. There's a group called EPIC. It's Inspiring People Initiating Change. It's a part of the Chamber of Commerce, and it's a group of young professionals. They are actually doing a talent attraction drive and talent retention drive. So young people like you who get these great degrees want you to stay in the Toledo area. There are plenty of opportunities with all of the universities in the area that have international programs that you can actually get paid to work for. There are also some great companies. Anyone ever heard of Communicate? Marketing and advertising company? Fantastic. They have clients like BASF out of Germany, Severstal out of Russia. The advertising that they do is comparable to what the big firms in Chicago and New York do. Also Hart. Anyone ever heard of SSOE? Architectural engineering firm. They design buildings, but also manufacturing operations. They've worked with Mercedes and Toyota and Ford and GM and Whirlpool. And when those companies say, we need a manufacturing facility to manufacture our stuff exactly like this, they design it perfectly. They have offices in India, China, Brazil, a couple other places. Very international. Highland Group is an insurance company, a commercial insurance company. They are doing all kinds of stuff internationally. Plant Moran, an accounting firm, I believe they're like number 9 or 10 in the country. They're doing gangbusters in China and Brazil and India. Of course, there are the large companies like Owens Corning, Owens Illinois, Dana, Libby, the Andersons. But there's also smaller companies as well that are doing some fantastic stuff. And Patty, I'm sorry I didn't put your company. But companies like Bionics and Radco and Surface Combustion and Nansa, they're small companies, but they're doing things internationally. And then companies like ProMedica and Mercy, I really see with the boom in medical services globally that they will be doing quite a lot internationally. So do think about the Toledo area. Toledo is bouncing back. I mean, I came here from halfway around the world to live here and to have our son go to school here and to hopefully have a happy wife here. It's a good place. Downtown is booming back. The ProMedica development with the old steam plant is a reality, and there's already been a ripple effect from that. The Hensville project right by Fifth Third Field. Again, of all the gin joints in the world, I ended up in Toledo, and I did that very consciously. So, when you get out of school, go ahead and go to the big city, or Geneva, or Shanghai, or does anyone know why I would put Bill in Denmark? No Lego geeks? That's where Lego is based. On the plane, I watched a documentary about Lego, so it's fresh in my mind. So go to those exotic places to study or do an internship, but do come back. It's been a pleasure speaking with you all. I wish you all the best of luck. That is my email address. You can have my card. Follow me on Twitter. I really don't do Facebook. My wife does Facebook, which is good. I've really gotten to like Twitter of, I'll go visit a company in Shanghai and put a picture up, and the company likes that as well. My Twitter is @Paul Zito. Ganzanga eine Ehre. It's been a pleasure to meet you all. Thank you.
Before we end, I just want to, if there's any questions, we can do it afterwards. But on behalf of the College of Business and Leadership, we have a small goodness for Paul.
Well, thank you.
So we have the water bottle, which is brand new.
Oh, excellent.
So there's people in China carrying these around, and Paul will carry around really well. And then also, this is the pen that